Hey guys, it's me Elisabeth. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing my physical TBR video because I actually filmed this last month in December and scrapped it because it just didn't work, and I have more books that I acquired since I made that video, and it was all over the place. It was way too long. I talked about each book for way too long, and I wanted to do this and to redo it, make it better. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about or trying to attempt to show you every single book on my TBR. Not exactly sure how this is going to work out because I don't want to take off every single book off my shelves, but I'm going to try to attempt to do this in some sort of a way. And yeah, this is my physical TBR. I will mention there are like 14 books that will not be in this physical TBR because they're wrapped in newspaper. You can go watch my video in my channel linked below about the newspaper books. But yes, those books will not be shown here, but you can see them in the other video. And that's just whatever the number of books I have currently minus the 14 books. Give a quick mention to some of the books up here. We do have my Harry Potter books. The Crimes of Grindelwald screenplay I have not read. I don't know if I'm ever going to actually read it. I did read the Fantastic Beasts one, but I'm not like dying to read the Crimes of Grindelwald one. I just kind of have it there because it looks cool and it's part of my Harry Potter shelf. I'm obsessed with Harry Potter, so I don't know. I don't know if I'll actually read it. Maybe I will. The movie was fine, but there was nothing that was amazing or anything about it, and it's whatever. And then these would technically be a reread if I was to read them, but the Harry Potter Illustrated editions, I haven't actually read them. I read the first one. I haven't read the rest of them. I still need to buy the fifth one at some point in my life, but I'm waiting till all of them come out in the illustrated editions before I read them, so it'll be years and years in the future, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I have flipped through all of them now, so I've seen the pictures for most of them. And I have the Character Vault, the Archive of Magic film Wizardry of Crimes of Grindelwald, the Case of Beasts from Fantastic Beasts, and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them Illustrated Edition. I started reading the Character Vault, and I read a tiny bit of the Case of Beasts, and I've looked through all of the books. And I just wanted to mention these are books that I haven't really read these, but I have actually read a good portion of the Character Vault. I got like more than halfway through this one. The rest of these are just kind of here. I probably will read the Fantastic Beasts Illustrated Edition at some point, but I've read the non-illustrated edition of Fantastic Beasts, so do with that what you will, but that's my Harry Potter shop, and I thought I'd just mention these books as what they're there, and these are just either duplicates or books that I have read over here. So I just thought I'd give that a mention because you might see these books a lot, and I want to just talk about them a little bit. Alright, so we're going to start off with my book cart over here. We just have a conglomeration of a lot of stuff. I feel like every time I reorganize it, it becomes an absolute mess again, like right after. I just organized this in December, and it's already kind of a mess. But I'm just going to start with the books on top of the cart because these are actually the books that are a part of my January TBR. So we'll just get into this. I'll try not to make this super long. I might go and talk a little bit more about specific books and not talk about, but I'm going to try not to make this super long. We'll see how this goes. We have The Narnian by Alan Jacobs, The Life and Imagination of C.S. Lewis. This is a book on Lewis, and I chose this book in the month of January for the Read Your Shelf Challenge by Chantel Reed-Day, and this is the cat on the cover prompt. We have 8 Cousins by Louisa May Alcott. This one I got for my birthday when I was a kid, and I read like part of it or half of it and never actually finished it, so this month I'm going to attempt to read this again. We have The Unmaking of June Farrell by Adrienne Young. This is a book of the month book. I heard a lot of people talking about this, and I got this because I wanted to get another book that they had by Agatha Christie, and I could only get that book if I was getting one of their books for the month. You can only get an add-on book if you're getting one of their book of the months, and this is the one that looked most interesting to me everyone was raving about it, and it still looks interesting, and now it's part of my TBR. And then we have Robert Jordan's Warrior of the Altai. If you don't know, Robert Jordan, the author of Wheel Time, he wrote this book. I didn't even know this existed, but I was in Walmart one time and found this book, and I was like, that's coming home with me. So those are the books that I have on my January TBR. Then we're just getting into the rest of the books. I guess I'll just mention this. This is on my TBR cart, but I'm actually currently listening to the audiobook. This is book 6 in the Wheel of Time. So this will be coming off very shortly, because I'll be finishing that hopefully soon. Then we have New Spring the novel. This is Wheel of Time in the Beginning. I'm not 100% sure where this falls in the Wheel of Time books, but I did thrift this one, so I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you about that, except that it's there. And then we have The Rhythmatist by Brandon Sanderson. Again, it's a Brandon Sanderson book. So we have Fate of the Fallen by Kel Cade. This is another Book of the Month book. This one just looks really good. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. These next two go together. We have Fallen Kingdom and Rebel Spring by Morgan Rhodes. I found these at the thrift store. They're like pretty decent hardcover copies, like for a couple bucks. Yeah, that's a thing. Next, we have Stephen Erickson's Gardens of the Moon. This is the most intimidating book I have on my entire TBR. Out of every single book I own, this is the most intimidating. Everyone talks about this series. There's so many people that are obsessed in love with the series, and there are also so many people who have such a hard time reading this and say this is the hardest book, especially the second book, Dead House Gates. They all say it is really hard to understand, and there's so many characters and just so much stuff, and it's really hard to understand, and it is just the most absolutely intimidating. It's not even the biggest book that I own. It's pretty decently big, but it's only like 500 pages, something like that. It's almost 500 or at 500. It's not the biggest book I own. I mean, I own Brandon Sanderson's books, and they're thousands of pages long. But this is the most intimidating book on my TBR. We have Gunslinger, Dark Tower No. 1 by Stephen King. I've actually never properly read a Stephen King book. I did try to read it years and years and years ago, but since then have gotten rid of it and decided I'm not going to read it. Basically, for me, the thing about Stephen King is, the reason I have this is because it's a fantasy, and, you know, I love fantasy, and I want to get into Stephen King because he's a popular author, everyone seems to love his books, but I don't want to read horror, or whatever. I don't want to read that type of stuff. I'm not into that genre. I'm not into that genre for anything. And then we have Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. This is the most exciting book on my entire TBR, let's be honest. But I need to get Dark Age because I thought I had access to it on audio, and I do not. So I can't read this until I listen to Dark Age or read it or whatever, so. But I'm so excited. This is, if you don't know, book 6 in the Red Rising books, the Red Rising saga. We have a collection of classic stories and poems of vintage Christmas. This has Louisa May Alcott, Charles Dickens, Ella Montgomery, and Mark Twain, and more. So this is just a bunch of random classic authors, and it's poems and short stories for Christmas time. I did read one of these a few years ago, like the first story a few years ago, and I intended to read some this past year and didn't. I'm just going to mention this really quick. We have Farmer Boy by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I did start reading this last year, but I'm working my way towards reading through the Little House series. I've actually read this book already, but I have the whole series, but there's like maybe 4 to 5 books that I have read, and the rest I haven't read, so I'm slowly working my way towards reading all of the books because I haven't actually read the whole series. We have The Wizard Behind Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling by Mark Shapiro. I thrifted this years ago, and I started reading it, and I never finished it, and, you know, I need to actually legitimately read it. The shelf I'm going through right now is a shelf of books that I started, so that's why all of these books I've started. We have Eden Conquered. I read Eden Conquered, but there's the novella in here called Forbidden Fruit, which I have not read, and I want to read the novella in the back, and that is why it is on my to-read shelf, because I need to read the novella. So we have Brandon Sanderson's Edge Dancer. This technically is a reread, and I did start reading this in November, but it is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I want to reread it because I haven't read it since I was a child, so it's kind of part of my TBR, even though I've already read it. And then we have A Brief History of Medieval Warfare, The Rise and Fall of the English Supremacy at Arms, 1314 through 1485 by Peter Reed. Then we have Paradise Restored by David Chilton. Again, all of these books I'm showing you currently, I have started. The Dragon and the Raven by G.A. Henty, another book that I started. I actually started annotating that one. Citizen Soldiers, the U.S. Army from the Normandy beaches to the Bulge to the surrender of Germany, June 7th, 1944 to May 7th, 1945 by Stephen E. Ambrose. We're going to have to move to the very bottom shelf, which will take a bit more maneuvering. These are all books I didn't start yet. So we have Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski starring The Witcher. So this is, this isn't the first book. The first book is like a book comprised of a bunch of short stories. And I need to get that one first because every time I would look this up, it would say this was the first book, or somehow I kept seeing that this was the first book, so I bought this one and then found out after I bought this that this actually isn't the first book. So then we have Taliesin by Stephen R. Lawhead. I've had this for a while and I've been meaning to read it, and I need to read it, so hopefully this year is the year that I actually read it. But this is part of the Pendragon cycle, book 1 of the Pendragon cycle, I should say. And it's an Arthurian, I don't know if it's a retelling or what it is, but it's Arthurian, and if you don't know, I love anything to do with the Arthurian stuff, anything with Arthur, Merlin, all of that. We also have Assassin's Quest and Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. These are book 2 and 3 in the Farseer trilogy. I'm currently reading Assassin's Apprentice right now. I'm not very far, but I'm currently reading that one. And I'm excited. I hope it's good. Next, we have The Bone Ships Wake and Call of the Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. This is books 2 and 3 in the Tide Tribe trilogy. Last year, I read book 1. Next, we have more Brandon Sanderson. So, we have Mistborn, The Well of Ascension, and The Hero of Ages. And if you look at these covers, I specifically sourced these covers out. I went on eBay and made sure every time that I was looking for one that I looked at the description very, what's the word? Made sure I was very meticulous about looking at the description and finding the exact copies that were not mass market paperback and not hideous covers. And this is what I came across. I like these covers. I think they're pretty cool. I know that everybody loves the British covers, and those are fine too. But for American covers, I like these. I think these are fine. I think they're much cooler than the normal paperback mass market ones that you just can find super easily. I think those things are hideous. Next, we're going to move on to my giant window shelf. I'm just going to start pulling random books off, putting them back on. Do it that way because I'm not pulling all of the books off my shelf. That's not happening. Also, this might get difficult, so let me just pull like a little stack off, show you, put them back, and do it like that. Starting off, we have a couple of middle grade. We have Who Could That Be at This Hour by Lemony Snicket. I've actually had this for quite a bit. I found this at the thrift store. It's All the Wrong Questions #1. I've had this on my TBR though for quite a long time. I didn't even know that Lemony Snicket wrote this, and then when I found out like a few years ago or something, I was like, I have to add this to my TBR. And if you don't know, I have been a long time fan of Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events. When I was a kid, I was obsessed, and so when I knew that he had another thing, I was like, I need to read that, I need to get that. But when I found out this one, I was like, yeah. So is it going to be any good? I have no idea, but it's on my TBR. If I don't read it this year, I will get rid of it. And then I also have The Thief Lord by Cornelia Funk. Once again, Cornelia Funk's an author I like. She wrote the Inkheart trilogy, which is just an amazing middle grade series. And I have this one. I did attempt to read Dragon Rider by her and decided that I wasn't really into it and decided to get rid of it. But we'll see if I like The Thief Lord. This seems to be like a fairly decent popular middle grade. I'm not really sure. I've seen this around. Yes, we've got Modern Fairies, Dwarves, Goblins, and Other Nasties, a practical guide by Miss Edith McBate, as told to Leslie M.M. Bloom. I've had this for a long time. This came in like a mystery box of books I got one time, and I just always thought the title sounded interesting and never got rid of it. But every time I do a book on haul, I'm always on the fence on whether I should get rid of this or not, and then I end up keeping it. So this one and a Lemony Snicket book are on the chopping block. If I don't read them this year, they're leaving. Gotta start getting rid of books. We have Celtic Myths and Legends by T.W. Rolston. And I had The Companion to Narnia, revised and expanded. A Complete Guide to the Magical World of C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia by Paul F. Ford. The Life of Jane Austen by John Halper, and I thrifted this one as well. And then we have The Story of Alice, Lewis Carroll, and The Secret History of Wonderland by Robert Louis Fairhurst. And I also thrifted this one as well. It's a really giant book, and it's not actually very floppy, which is kind of strange. But I love the size of this and the way it feels, and I love the cover. It's really pretty. It's got these cool, like, gold, like, star things, and I don't know, it's just a really cool cover. And then we have Inventing Scrooge, the incredible true story behind Dickens' legendary Christmas Carol by Carla DeVitos. Again, I love Dickens, so this will be interesting. I've had this for quite a while as well. I got this one off of thrift books or something like that. We have Music in the Middle Ages with an introduction on music of ancient times by Gustave Rees. This one I thrifted at the thrift store, and I just looked at the cover and thought, I love that cover. I love the Middle Ages and Renaissance, and this just screamed like it was cool, and it's about music in the Middle Ages. The Encyclopedia of Arthurian Legends by Ronan Coughlin. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Pearl, and Sir Orfeo. These are 3 different stories, and this is by Tolkien himself. We have an Arthurian Handbook by Norris J. Lacey and Jeffrey Ashe. Merlin, the Prophet and His Story by Jeffrey Ashe. And we have another book on the Celts by Jean Markle. We've got some more history. We have Life in a Medieval Castle by Joseph and Francis Geese. We have How the Irish Saved Civilization, the Untold Story of Ireland's Heroic Road from the Fall of Rome to the Rise of Medieval Europe by Thomas Cahill. I think this is another thrift books by Voices of the Pacific, Untold Stories from the Marine Heroes of World War II by Adam Makos. And then we have The Fall of the Roman Empire, New History of Roman Barbarians by Peter Heather. John Adams by David McCullough. Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. You would know what this is, obviously. Or if you don't, that's questionable. But I did read a few stories out of this book, but I haven't actually fully read the whole book. So once the book is completely finished, it will come off my TBR shelf. But until that time, it will be on there, which will be a while, because there's so many different stories in here. We have Heidi by Joanna Spivey. I've never actually read this in my lifetime, ever. And then we have Mary Poppins in the Park by P.L. Travers. And then we have Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. This is the Book of the Month book. And then we have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Other Classic Works by Lewis Carroll. I have this on my TBR shelf because the other classic works I have not read, and I want to reread Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Okay, next we're going into some more classics. We have Alfred Lord Tennyson's Idols of the King. And then we have Lawrence Stern's Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman. And then we have Emily's Quest by Ella Montgomery. This is the 3rd in the series, so clearly I can't read this one yet. And then we have Road to Yesterday by Ella Montgomery. I don't know where this falls in the Ella Montgomery book. We have War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So we have The Talisman by Sir Walter Scott. Then we have Essays and Journals by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Don Quixote, Cervantes. I know I probably butchered that name, but another International Collector's Library. Most of these are International Collector's Library. Then I have Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. I have Charlemagne by Harold Lamb. And then we have My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. A Treasury of Hans Christian Andersen. I thrifted 5 novels by Mark Twain. So we have The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Prince and the Pauper, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, The Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, and The Tragedy of Pudd'nhead Wilson. This is a giant, nice novel. Christmas Books by Charles Dickens, another International Collector's Library edition. I thrifted this one as well. Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens. This was also thrifted. years and years and years and years ago, back when I was a teenager. And we have some more Dickens. So we have Oliver Twist, Mystery of Edwin Drood, Barnaby Rudge, and Hard Times. Next, I'm going to talk about these 3 books by the same author. These books are all written by Rosalind Kirvan. First, we have Fairies, Elves, and Goblins and the Old Stories. Aren't these covers just stunning? I'm obsessed. I found these at the bookstore right next to where I work, and this one is English Fairy Tales and Legends. Stunning. I'm obsessed with these covers. Like, these are amazing. And then we have the best one, Arthurian Legends. I mean, need you say much more? I initially bought this one, and I love this cover so much, and of course I'm obsessed with Arthurian Legends, and I was like, I have to have that. And then, like, months later or something, I decided that I wanted to buy the other 2. We have Chasing the Prophecy Beyonders by Brandon Muehl. I think this is book 3 in the Beyonders series. Liza Lockmore by Scott Lynch. Origins of the Wheel of Time, The Legends and Mythologies that Inspired Robert Jordan by Michael Livingston. Not only is this a cool book about Wheel of Time, but this is the Broken Binding edition. So we've got the blue sprayed edges, and not only that, but we have the dragons. Bruh! Look at that. That's gorgeous. And then we have that. The Wheel of Time. That's amazing. Love it. I'm so excited. This book is a really cool edition. I will probably not be reading this until I finish the series. Shaping of Middle-earth by J.R.R. Tolkien. We have The Once and Future King by T.H. White, another Arthurian type book. We have On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers. This is a book that inspired Pirates of the Caribbean. It is 1066, The Year of Conquest by David Howarth. Howarth? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but this is not my book. This is my parents' book, but I found this on their shelves when I was going through them, and I was like, I need to read that, and I put it on my shelf, so now it's just on my shelf. The Blue Max by Jack D. Hunter. Forgotten Trinity, Recovering the Heart of Christian Belief by James R. White. Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. This is the classic expression of Christian community. Poems by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis and Mere Christianity, The Crisis That Created a Classic by Paul McCusker. This one is like a brand new book. I didn't thrift this. C.S. Forrester and the Hornblower Saga. Revised edition by Stanford Sternlicht. I'm a fan, apparently, of finding used books about classic authors. Diana Rayburn, A Curious Beginning, a Veronica Speedwell mystery. This is book 1 in the Veronica Speedwell mysteries. So it's a Victorian novel set in The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. The History of Underclothes by C. Willett and Phyllis Cunnington. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fall of Arthur, edited by Christopher Tolkien. 20 Hours and 40 Minutes by Amelia Earhart. One of my favorite books of all time is Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. And you know what? You would have thought, because I love that book so much, that I would have read her other book, Seabiscuit. Nope, it's still on my TBR. This is the year that I will be reading this book. The Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England by Ian Mortimer. A handbook for visitors to the 14th century. Here I Stand, A Life of Martin Luther by Roland H. Bainton. The rest of the Little House books. So we have The First 4 Years, These Happy Golden Years, The Little Town, The Bright Long Winter, By the Shores of Silver Lakes, On the Banks of Plum Creek, and Little House on the Prairie. I read that in backwards order, but you get the point. The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas, Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott, and Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. The Penguin Book of Dragons. This is just a bunch of classic dragon stories. We've got, so on the back here, let me just read this bit. 2,000 years of legend and lore about the menace and majesty of dragons which have breathed fire into imaginations from ancient Rome to Game of Thrones. We have Lady Susan, The Watsons, and Sanderson by Jane Austen. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. The Iliad by Homer. Test of the Uber Rails by Thomas Hardy. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I like this edition. If you're wondering about this edition, this is the Canon Classic, so this is from Canon Press. Now we're getting into the last stack on my window shelf. Patrick O'Brien, Blue at the Mizzen. The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. Great Stories of the Sea and Ships, edited by N.C. White. This is just a bunch of different stories by these people here. Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, another Russian novel. Aeneid, Virgil. This book is another classic, and this is another one of the Canon Press, the second most intimidating book on my entire TBR. Like I said before, Gardens of the Moon is the most intimidating book that I own. This is coming in at a second. It's not necessarily close, because Gardens of the Moon is really intimidating. But this is in second, and that is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Also, it is my goal to read it this year. And the last book that I have on this shelf is not a classic, and that is book 2 in the Dresden Files, Full Moon. Right, excuse the change of background, but now we're moving on to some books that I have next to my bookshelf on the floor, because I suck and I don't have book space. So, we're going to go into the first stack that I have over here, and this is just a random assortment. There's no particular order to these books. This is book 3 and book 3 and book 5 in the Dresden Files. I just recently thrifted these. The Christmas Box by Richard Paul Evans. Simone de Beauvoir, Memoirs of a Beautiful Daughter. The Iron Mask by Alexander Dumas. Valverde's Gold, A True Tale of Greed, Obsession, and Grit by Mark Honegger. I can't say that. You can try to say that. I'm not gonna. Another cover buy. I don't buy books by their covers, like rarely ever. But sometimes at the thrift store, I just see a book and I'm like, that looks really cool. This is Luncheon at the Boating Party by Susan Vreeland. I bought this because of the art on the cover. It's Auguste Renoir. Martin Luther, the Man Who Rediscovered God and Changed the World by Eric McTassis. Mythology of Celtic People by Charles Squire. Undaunted Courage, Meriwether Lewis, Thomas Jefferson, and the Opening of the American West. Another book by Stephen E. Ambrose. I need to freaking read these books, bruh. I need to read the Stephen E. Ambrose books. I have Cottage by the Sea by Debbie Macomber. Classic Penguin, cover to cover. This is all about Penguin classics. Renaissance, Maker of Modern Man. This is a book about Renaissance art. The next stack we have is quite literally Dickens. We have selected short fiction, Christmas Carol, and other writings. I did read A Christmas Carol, and again, I do want to annotate this, but it also has other writings, and I haven't read those other writings. We have the Pickwick Papers, Hard Times, Oliver Twist, Martin Chuzzlewit, and Bleak House. I think this is the one I want to read the most. The last little stack that I have here is mostly just fantasy. There's one that's not fantasy, but it's just all the most recent books that I've received or gotten that I'm the most excited for. So we have The Narrow Road Between Desires by Patrick Rothfuss. We have Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. The Heroes, also by Joe Abercrombie. Sharp Ends, Tales from the World of First Law by Joe Abercrombie. And A Little Hatred, book 1 in the... what's this called? I don't remember what this is called, but it's by Joe Abercrombie. It's Age of Madness. That just came into my brain. I remembered it. Thank you. Age of Madness trilogy. There's obviously 2 other books that I have yet to buy. I have The Pariah by Anthony Ryan. I've heard a few people talk about this, and one of my favorite booktubers like absolutely loved this book, and I was like, I'm interested. I was already interested, and then he was talking about how it was his favorite thing, or one of his favorite things, and I was like, sign me up. A book I got for Christmas, and I'm so excited to read this. As I Remember by Lillian M. Gilbreth. Sorry, I said that weirdly. If you don't know, Lillian Mala Gilbreth is the mother of all the Gilbreth children in Cheaper by the Dozen. And if you don't know, Cheaper by the Dozen is one of my favorite books of all time. And this cover is stunning. I love this cover. I love the picture of Lillian Gilbreth, and I'm so excited to read this. I hope I legitimately get to this soon. But that is my entirety of my physical TBR. There might be 1 or 2 books that I missed, but that is like the entirety of my TBR. I will see you in the next video. I hope you have your own fun reading adventures. Bye.